And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. And today we officially, of course, we never really have stopped covering politics about the issues that matter to you. We really officially kick off the political season. It seems like we haven't really covered anything since the presidential debates, but which was, over a year ago. I had a young man come up to me in DMV and say, Kevin Miller, we've got to get out and start doing things again. So we will begin that. By the way, we're joined by congressional candidate Nick Henderson. We'll talk a little bit about the legislature coming up in the last half hour of the program. Lieutenant Governor Brad Little will join us in studio. But we have Nick Henderson with us here, a candidate for Congress from Coeur d'Alene. We appreciate you joining us, and welcome to the Treasure Valley. I'm
excited to be down here and actually get a chance to kind of campaign and meet some of the people that are down here, especially that are in the larger part of the district. And I'll be over there tomorrow as well.
Indeed. So let's talk a little bit about you. Why don't you? I've had a chance to read some of your stuff. We've posted some of the stuff on KIDOTalkRadio.com. We have gone back and forth on some of your policies, but why don't you introduce yourself to the Treasure Valley? Tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Right, absolutely. So I'm a commercial pilot by trade, and that's something I've been doing for the last a little bit over half a decade now. Before that, I was in the United States Army. I served as an infantryman with the 4th Infantry Division out of Colorado Springs, and that included combat tours in Iraq. For me, I was born in Coeur d'Alene, and I'm a lifelong resident and native of Idaho, and I'm excited to have an opportunity to represent Idaho down the road in Congress.
Well, first off, thank you for your service. We appreciate that, sir.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Number two, we always hear about young people that they're not involved in politics. You're the exception to the rule. You've got a life. You're starting your career. Things are going well. When we had you on the phone, you were in Mexico having a good time.
Yeah.
Why do this? Why jump into this race?
And that's one of the questions that I think every candidate has to really kind of do some soul searching on, especially like you mentioned. I'm in a really good place with my career right now as a pilot. I've got a good life forming up for me up in Coeur d'Alene, and Congress in itself is really one of the most loathed entities in the country, with the lowest approval ratings of any entity in the country. And the question is, why would you want to become a part of that organization? For me, I think it goes back to my service, which started in the Army. I really care about America, and I really want to do as much as I can to make America great. And serving in Congress gives me an opportunity to directly address head-on issues with corruption and how things are being ran that I believe that have really been deleterious to the United States as a whole.
Now, I won't attempt to pronounce that word exactly, but describe the pin on your jacket. A lot of people don't understand that, and if I won't even try to misidentify it, but I know the significance of that pin when you're around the Treasure Valley or they see you on the campaign trail. That's just not something that you can get at DMB or Zamzows. This is something significant that you earned, and the Army recognizes that.
Right. So the pin that I have on my jacket is a combat infantryman's badge. It's something that the only way to earn it is to be an infantryman in the Army and to have seen and engaged in direct combat with the enemy. So I earned this in Iraq. I was just north of Baghdad in a town called Baqaba, and it was February of 2006. And we took direct fire at an outpost we were on top of. We took incoming rocket fire, and then we engaged in small arms fights with the anti-Iraq forces at the time, AIF, Al-Qaeda offshoots, and then we pursued them and continued to engage them. It was back then, this was the tip of the spear of the surge when we went over in 05 and 06. So we had a really heavy year, and nobody in our unit came back without a combat infantryman's badge. Everyone saw fights over there.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. If you have a question for congressional candidate Nick Henderson, there already seems to be a lot of folks in the field. How do you define the opposition?
Well, it's a wide race, and from my understanding of it, it's really kind of unheard of for there to be this much competition for this seat. I think what we've got is, in terms of other candidates, there are a lot of people that care about Idaho and the United States who are running.
Sure. Now, and this is where you get to differentiate yourself, sir. You've got people that have been politicians. You've got people that have been business people. Mm-hmm. We have people that are from the north, from the whatever. And you're a successful businessman, a combat veteran. a person who is all about sacrifice. So what do you bring to the table, sir?
I think it's a combination of the fact that I'm not a career politician, and that's been a big problem with politics in Washington, D.C., and that's kind of been hurtful for the states and state right level. I'm coming to this as a citizen and as someone who isn't a career politician who, for some outlandish reason, has decided that I need to serve in this capacity. The other thing that I bring to this is that I am the youngest person running for this race. I'm 31 years old, and I'm bridging a gap, I think, between generations. You've got these conservatives that are kind of they've been around for a while, and what we're finding is the voting age of these younger voters are starting to come into their own right. And I serve as kind of a bridge between the older generation of conservatives and these younger college-age conservatives, or millennials, if you will.
That would be you.
I am. Yes. Technically, I am a millennial, and I know that would probably strike a nerve with a few voters. They don't like the word, but
you self-identified.
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Let's go to the phones already. Pro-Life wants to talk to Nick Henderson, congressional candidate here at 580-5436. Pro-Life, good morning. You're on with Nick Henderson.
No, thanks for Nick being able to be in there. Nick, I'm interested in what your position is on transgenders in the military, and also whether you would support a legislation or an amendment to the Constitution having to do with personhood beginning with fertilization.
Absolutely. I do not believe that the military is the place for social experiments. And the last thing I want to see are the men and women on the ground having to deal with these like I said, social experiments where they're putting transgenders into the military and they're recruiting them actively. You kind of put a lot of the mission and the function of the military at risk or at harm's way when you kind of peel off into these side projects. Am I saying that transgenders can't serve their country? That's really not for me to say, but I believe that the focus of our military should be strictly on the national defense of the United States of America. And if we need to pursue social experimentation, we should do it somewhere else. Training and military focus should be strictly on the mission and getting the combat done. As for a congressional amendment to the Constitution, I do believe that life begins right at the start, right at the very beginning. And a lot of that, for me, that position is we've got recognizable heartbeat and brain activity. We know that a fetus that is being carried can feel pain, reacts to external stimuli. That is life to me. And at the same stroke as we would say that a single-celled microbe frozen in the ice on the polar cap of Mars is life. I think that something as complex and multicellular as a human embryo, as a fetus, is absolutely life, without question. So if that was what we needed to do to ensure that, to safeguard that, then I would be completely on board with pursuing an amendment that puts that language in the Constitution.
Yeah, would you say that abortion is murder?
I would, and the late-term abortion stuff is absolutely appalling. I can't believe that it's even something that is that is even considered as reasonable by those that would back it up. It shouldn't be an option when you're taking a human life, except in the most extreme, terminal cases of preservation of life.
What about rape and incest?
Oh, my gosh, Pro-Life. Thank you for the call. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So let's get back to the big issues here. We've got Congress debating a continual resolution. What can one person from the 1st Congressional District in Idaho do to make a difference, Nick? What will you do to be elected to help a lot of folks, whether they're in Coeur d'Alene or here in the Treasure Valley, deal with the frustration they have with Congress? Yeah,
and I think the biggest solution, I think the most effective solution to dealing with the frustration with Congress is putting a leash on Congress. In that, and you talked about the continuing resolution, and we've just seen this has been status quo, one continuing resolution, spending resolution after another. I believe that we should have a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution that requires that Congress is producing a balanced budget every year. And beyond that, I think the way that we restore some faith in Congress is to get congressional term limits in place. And those are two things that I've campaigned on is we're going to get a balanced budget going. And I absolutely, before I even considered running for politics, I'm sitting around the coffee shop or I'm at the American Legion talking to people about this sort of stuff. Congressional term limits absolutely have to be a thing, and that is a priority of mine.
580-5436 if you have a question for Nick Henderson, congressional candidate. Let's go back to the military. Your thoughts on the state of the military right now?
I believe that we've seen a really positive trend and growth in the military in this last year. We've got Secretary of Defense Mattis is an exemplary leader, and there's been budget improvements for the military. We've seen recruiting go up. What we're seeing in the battlefield space is commanders in the field have had their hands untied. The Obama administration rules of engagement became so ridiculous that if you were engaging an enemy fighter and they were to go behind cover and then come back out from behind that cover, you as a soldier were not allowed to continue that engagement until the enemy fighter renewed fighting against you. And that was absolutely ridiculous. And what we've seen on the field in the battle space is that the rules of engagement have been not necessarily relaxed. We're still a very disciplined military. We're really one of the best militaries in terms of discipline on the battlefield. But we've seen battlefield commanders and troops on the ground now have the ability to make the calls that they need to make to ensure that they're safe and that the mission is a success and that the people that they're protecting are safe. So I think the state of the military has improved, and you see that in the morale of the troops.
Let's talk a little bit about if elected, you would have to, hopefully you wouldn't, but you might have to vote for a declaration of war, particularly when we're talking about the situation with North Korea. What have you been learning and studying and your thoughts on the North Korean situation?
Right. I'm like many Americans, I'm very concerned with what's happening in North Korea. I would love to see a diplomatic avenue be the solution in that region. We see that North Korea and South Korea are going to renew peace talks. That's coming up, I believe, in the next month or so, next couple of weeks or so. I think that is the avenue to pursue. But in terms of voting for war, when it comes to a clear and present threat to the safety of Americans, to the safety of our allies, I absolutely, as a soldier, hate the idea of war. You'll never find a soldier who wants to go to war. That's time away from our families. That's our friends being killed. That's us being maimed. War is a last effort, a last-ditch response. North Korea has nukes, and the danger with North Korea having nukes is that those nukes could then get into the hands of non-nuclear countries. We look at Iran, or we look at terrorist organizations out of Syria and Afghanistan. If they were to get their hands on these nukes, that's a serious risk to us as a country. So if it came down to us or them, absolutely, I would put us first, and that's the way it should be. And war may need to be the way we go with North Korea. I'd hate to see it happen, but if it means protecting America, then that's the way to go.
More with Nick Henderson coming up. If you have a call, question, concern, 580-5436. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And today's Idaho Newsmaker brought to you by American Revolution Vodka. Nick Henderson with us in studio, taking your phone calls. He's running for Congress at 580-5436. And we're joined by, the czar of Idaho reporting and politics, the publisher of the Gem State Patriot, Tea Party Bob. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Bob. How are you?
Good, thank you. The biggest problem we have in this country, unbeknownst to many of our politicians, because I think most of them are just a bunch of doofuses, is health care. It's the most costly part of corporations' payments, and it's the most costly part of almost every individual's payments, monthly or yearly. How are you going to solve the problem?
Yeah, and it's a growing thing. You see that the same with the VA system, and you look at the number of people that are getting into that retirement age, and their health care is becoming vital to their survival. It's a complicated issue. It's something that people have taken a lot of different stabs at. We saw that the ACA, the Obamacare policies, those failed. They bankrupted the health insurance providers, and they made health care really unaffordable. I was one of the people when it first passed who lost my health insurance because my plan no longer met the ACA minimums, and to get the same plan would have cost me another $2,000, and I'm a healthy young man. It was crazy. I think that a policy that embraces the open market, which makes the American economy so vital, so vibrant, is that open market. I believe that the key to reducing the cost of access to health care and access to health insurance is getting away of these barriers to interstate purchases of insurance. You know, just like you could buy car insurance from any provider in any state, you should have access to the best possible health insurance at the best possible price, regardless of what state you reside in. Once we let the free market take over, we're going to see the cost of health care and health insurance come down, and that's going to make it more accessible for more people.
Well, we saw the free market. It didn't work the last time because there's too much control with third-party payments. So my last question, and very quickly, why is our healthcare system broken? Because it's not so much what we pay. It's the fact that we don't have health care and we don't have choice. We have sick care.
Right, and that comes... And we could go on a long time about that and how I feel about big pharma and kind of the problem that's there is that there's more interest in the long-term money that can be made in prolonging someone's sickness and treating their sickness versus actually curing them and keeping them from even coming in with an ailment in the first place. And we saw that with the pharma bro guy who raised the cost of that prescription drug by something like, 500%. And there's something to be said about some accountability if you're dealing with people's health and lives. I think big pharma's a lot to blame for why our health insurance and health care system is broken.
Thank you, Dick. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And back with Nick Henderson here, Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Now, I'd be remiss, and we only have a few seconds left here in this, but you have a very unique policy concerning marijuana. I brought this up in your absence, and this is something that a lot of people on this program will agree with you on. They disagree with me on it, but I'm not going to lead the witness. What are your thoughts on marijuana?
I've found it, and this has been probably one of our most responded to policy positions, has been that I believe that the DEA, and that's the responsibility of the federal government, to deschedule cannabis and legalize access to marijuana products in the United States. And that is my position. As a conservative, it's kind of a radical position to have, and you'll find that most of my opponents are staunchly camped out on the other side of this issue, and I believe that we need to deschedule it and legalize.
What would be the reason for that?
The reasoning for that, from my perspective, is that we've got this product, this thing that is no worse than tobacco.
Dope.
We got dope. I think what we've got cannabis. It's no worse than tobacco. It's no worse than alcohol. In fact, I would argue that you see people who are consuming alcohol are more reckless. They're injuring people in these drunk driving accidents. They're getting abusive or violent. You see people that are smoking tobacco. They're burning their lips out with cancer. Their throats are burnt out with cancer. And then we've got marijuana products that actually, arguably, could have some medicinal use as well. And the problem is the DEA has scheduled this as a Class 1 narcotic, which is no medicinal use, and that is just outlandish. There's absolutely uses for this product, and I think it's long past due to deschedule and legalize cannabis and marijuana products.
We have a challenge, though, with people drinking and driving, not only in this area but this state. I mean, all of a sudden, if people are toking and driving, and we've seen this in Colorado and other states, Nick, where people, it expands the problem.
Right, and the same DUI laws apply to those people as do with the alcohol. You get caught high and driving, you're still going to jail on a DUI, and that's still a life-altering conviction, and you're going to cost you a ton of money, and you're going to lose a lot of your freedom because of it, and that's fine. But at the same point, you're not doing anything more or less damaging with marijuana that you would be or would not be with alcohol in terms of how it affects you biologically.
Well, Nick Henderson, we will have more with you coming up. We appreciate you making time for us, coming in. What are you doing throughout the Treasure Valley? If people want to get a hold of you and ask you questions and be involved with your campaign, what can they do?
Right. The best way to get a hold of the campaign is to go online to the website, nickhenderson.vote, or we're on Facebook, Henderson for Congress. It's Vote Nick H on Facebook.com. And best way to get a hold of me is through those mediums. We've got a phone number, email form, that sort of thing. I'll be over in Caldwell at a Republican women's meeting tomorrow for their monthly meeting. With all of the candidates. We'll be sitting down and presenting ourselves to them and kind of laying out our policy positions there as well.
Well, we look forward to that. Nick, thank you for coming in, and good luck to you, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, anytime. We really like it when you come in at the 6 o'clock hour. That maybe we can arrange
maybe next time I'll come in earlier.
You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. And coming up, we will speak with the Lieutenant Governor who's in studio. Quickly, we'll be going to D.C. for a moment to get an impact or to get thoughts on President Trump, the weekend retreat, and what's next. And then Lieutenant Governor Brad Little will join us. We'll get an exclusive preview of, what we can expect during the legislature. Also, we'll see if we can twist his arm and talk about his vision for Idaho as well here on this Monday morning. Quickly to Washington, Rachel Sutherland joins us at Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio. Rachel, what a weekend.
Oh, absolutely. There was the Camp David meeting with GOP leaders, and the president talked about the agenda for the year coming, and also the fact that he's going to be campaigning for certain candidates during the 2018 midterm cycle, not the Roy Moores of the world, it sounded like, but candidates that he thinks can win. Also, of course, at the same time, his supporters making the rounds on the Sunday shows talking about this Fire and Fury book, calling it a work of fiction, and Steve Bannon releasing his own statement clarifying really the comments that he made. He didn't say he didn't make them. He just clarified it, said he really was directing these comments toward former campaign chairman Paul Manafort rather than Donald Trump Jr. or the president. So it seems that there's a lot of damage control going on. I thought it was very interesting to see Bannon seem kind of crestfallen over this whole thing. He doesn't seem to issue, and it wasn't an official apology, but it doesn't seem to do those very easily.
Well, no one likes a breakup, especially a bad breakup. So, Rachel, what can we expect this week from Washington? Everybody's getting back to work, and of course we have that continuing resolution.
Oh, absolutely. January 19th is the date on that the government needs funding. And over the weekend, again, at Camp David, the president was talking about DACA, and he was saying that, look, we want this money for a border wall, so that's going to be part of the fight that's set up. Whether or not they put off that fight for later or if it's attached to the spending bill kind of remains to be seen. Also today, the president is going to Nashville. He's going to be speaking to the Farmers Bureau Convention, some discussion about NAFTA and some other things that they'll be talking about. So a busy day ahead and a busy week or two ahead as well.
Rachel, you're always on the case. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, Rachel Sutherland exclusively on KIDO Talk Radio. And joining us now, Lieutenant Governor Brad Little, ready to go. Another big day, huh?
It is.
When we think of the legislative schedule and the preview and the state of the state, just like the Super Bowl, just like the College Football National Championship, it just doesn't happen. There's a lot of work and preparation that goes into it. What can we expect today?
Well, of course, this morning, which is not at all common, the Senate's going to select their basically 3 of their 4 leaders. That's taking place right now. The caucus meeting's taking place right now. The majority leader, the assistant majority leader, and the caucus chairman. So that's kind of a big deal.
It is kind of a big deal. When you take a look at the folks getting in, people like you, sir, on the farm, loving Idaho, working every day, how does this impact their lives?
Well, of course, as you said, there's quite a bit of work that takes place prior to getting here, but there's significant unknowns. One of them is the ramifications of the tax bill, the federal tax bill, how that's going to affect us. And I think, obviously, spending the money, they've had the Economic Outlook Committee met last week. We're in good shape. That's way better than some of the years when we were in desperate shape. I think growth's going forward. Obviously, education funding, which is where we spend 65% of our money, will be a big issue. All the agencies, the governor will talk to all the directors this morning prior to the State of the State, kind of give them a preview. He and I will meet with both majority and minority leadership this morning. Then the State of the State starts at 1.
Indeed. Let's talk a little education, because it seems like with the growth here in the Treasure Valley and throughout the state, it is a challenge. You've had senators in the past say that we have a teacher's crisis. What can the legislature do? Obviously, more money is good. It's great that the executive and legislature have worked in the past to be good stewards of our money through the tough times with the rainy day fund and such. But back to education, how do we balance, needs versus financial reality?
Well, it's just like business. You've got to be competitive. And if all the other states around you are paying 30, 40% more, you have to be competitive, because we want our best kids in Idaho to want to be teachers and to teach here and to keep the best educators here. So we have to stay. It's just like any profession. you have to be competitive, and that's part of what we do in education is be competitive to keep the best professionals in our classrooms.
Yeah, that'll be a big topic of discussion now. In the attempt of humor, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about urban renewal. So, I'm a little concerned about all this building going on in Star. We've got an Albertsons coming in, Ripley's, Ridley's, whatever, and then we've got a Dairy Queen. I mean, I'm worried now if we can have a Dairy Queen in Star, what does this mean for Emmett?
We do not have a Dairy Queen. But I remember when McDonald's came into Emmett, and it was a big darn deal. So.
Wow, well, you have a McDonald's.
But we still got our old Rowan, which is a family-owned, been there for a long time. So
sure.
We hang on to that. That's a big tradition in Idaho, the Rowans.
So how do we balance that, growth versus tradition, sir?
Carefully. I mean, that's and there should be, matter of fact, the piece this morning about the development out by just below Shadow Valley Golf Course off of Beacon Light Road. People need to get involved with their city council, with their county commissioner about what they want. You want to have the right kind of growth. It needs to be smart growth. I hear more and more concern about the growth and obviously the traffic, what's taking place. I do remember when that wasn't a problem.
Right.
When we had 100,000 people in Idaho out of work. So I like this problem better, but it requires a different set of activity by the citizens and by political leaders.
Before we get to more of the vision and some phone calls here at 580-5436 with Lieutenant Governor Brad Little, let's get back to what we can expect today from the state of the state. And obviously, people have some big issues, whether it's health care, Medicaid expansion, the grocery tax. All these things will be brought up. Second Amendment issues. Any insight that you can give us?
Well, I have advocated to my friends at the House and Senate that because of the magnitude of the tax thing, that in all tax legislation has to start in the House of Representatives. That's in our Constitution. But that the House and Senate ought to have a joint meeting early to look at the ramifications of it, so we don't get into this into session back and forth, and we see if there's a consensus within the two tax committees and within the two bodies on what to do. We believe that right now, if we just adopt, there's going to be about $100 million more come out of Idaho families' pockets that's going to go into the state coffers. That's what the Tax Commission told the Economic Advisory Committee last year. Part of the reason is we don't have as many exemptions. Some of the exemptions go away at the federal level, and so there is going to be some kind of tax relief. I don't know what it's going to be, but the sooner we get some kind of an agreement on it, the better it'll be.
What was it like being at the winter meetings? I saw a lot of people at your luncheon and stuff with the social media and stuff. You're all abuzz over social media. What was that like to kind of have the pre-show preview, if you will, with everybody?
Now, are you talking about the Central Committee, the State Central Committee, or our luncheon?
Your luncheon. I mean,
it was good.
I just asked the general questions, nothing specific.
No, it was. I mean, people are optimistic. We today, because of where we are, we have the resources to do some of the things we need to do, including tax relief.
Yeah, a lot of people, and again, we've been blessed because folks have moved in, but the tough times were very tough. Now we go to the phones. And a gentleman I'm sure you're familiar with, Hank, joins us now. Hank, a legend of talk radio here in the Treasure Valley. Hank, good morning.
Good morning, Hank.
Thank you, Kevin. What I'd like to ask you, Lieutenant Governor, is, one, would you eliminate the double payroll systems at Boise State? Now, there are other colleges, but Boise State's the worst offender, where salaried employees like vice presidents and stuff are listed as hourly employees, and there's no transparency in terms of compensation. I think this needs to end.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, one of the proposals that I think the governor's going to talk about today in the State of the State, because he's kind of given a preview of it, is that we try, and transparency is part of it, but we try and make all the institutions, particularly payroll, which is a big part of it, that all those backroom functions be consolidated. That's taking place in Maine right now, and we believe we can save. Well, there's all kinds of estimates, anywhere from $3 million to $20 or $30 $20 million a year. And that would resolve part of that. And besides that, that would be a process where at the state board level, it would have more scrutiny by one group, which is the state board, instead of all the institutions kind of acting independently.
And my second question to you is, how, for instance, the Indiana, particularly at Boise State, discrimination against veterans in terms of class scheduling, also freedom of speech. Jeff Sessions cited Boise State for its free speech violations, and this is under President Custer. Are they going to clean the act up in Boise State?
Well, you and I both know there's going to be a new president of Boise State. The state boards, I know they put a search committee together and they're working forward. I'm in the camp of, that the state ought to give general direction, and then in essence, those administrators need to run those universities the best they can. That we shouldn't micromanage them too much, but we need to say, here's what we want to do, and obviously discrimination and transparency and freedom of the press are all part of what we want.
And my third and last
Oh my gosh,
question,
this is like the Hank press conference, Hank. We've got to get rolling, but another time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We go to Craig in Boise with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio with our special guest, Lieutenant Governor Brad Little. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning, Kevin. Lieutenant Governor, I would like to ask you a question about educational funding. I have two daughters at Boise State. I walk through the campus every once in a while. The place is immaculate. There's sculptures everywhere. It's like somebody's theme park. This is not the colleges of the past where every once in a while you'd see some decorum. This place looks like it's been built up. There's an excessive amount of money that's been hemorrhaged and spent that is not going to the students there. I was wondering, you were talking about not micromanaging. I believe it's time that the state steps in and starts doing this. They spend so much money there that is just absolutely not necessary, and I know necessary is in the eyes of the beholder. But when I go down there, I think, my God, it's like they're trying to build a museum. It's this legacy concept that somebody's been building. What do you have to say about that?
Well, Craig, I'd have to know what each facility, each structure you're talking about, but for the most part,
statues all over, bronze statues all over the place, manicured lawns, manicured shrubbery, all brand new buildings all the time. Everything looks perfect. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about tremendous amount of input into basically superficiality that is not going to the students, that is not going to the teachers or professors or graduate students. That's what I'm talking about. All brand new trucks.
Well, all right, Craig, thank you for the call.
Well, a lot of that is private money. A lot of it is people that are thankful for the education they've got at whatever institution it might be, and out of affection for their institution, they give some of that money. I've been involved in philanthropy at the higher ed level, and people like to give to bricks and mortars because they want to be remembered for being generous to their alma mater or somebody that's done some kind of research for them. You fill in the spot of what you'd be thankful for an institution for, and a lot of it is either individuals or entities or philanthropies given money. Now, I'm sure there's some of it's done with operational money, but operational money is kind of apportioned out by the state. And we have got to change how we deliver higher education to get the cost down. I am all in that camp. And in fact, that's one of the recommendations of the higher ed task force, that we have more digital delivery of institutions. And the fact that you got to maintain all those buildings is expensive. But you still got to be attractive, because what we want to do, the most important thing to me, is that our kids have the best possible opportunity to survive, and that we don't export our kids out of Idaho. And having an attractive institution, I think, is helpful to that.
All right, we appreciate that, Craig. A couple more minutes with the Lieutenant Governor, then he's going to go on the road there, and a busy day for you, sir. Let's get back to the vision thing. It's George H.W. Bush used to call it the vision for Idaho. What is your vision?
Well, I think I just talked about it. I've been very fortunate. Our kids were educated here, left, and came back. And what I hear from people from one end of the state to the other is their desire that we not export our kids. We today have the very enviable position that we don't just want any job in Idaho. We want good paying jobs that are additive to existing communities, industries, whatever it may be, that diversify the economy so that if a commodity price goes down or there's a .com wreck on Wall Street or whatever it is, we can continue to go forward. But to me, the most important thing in Idaho, and that every decision we make should be, do we provide the best opportunity for our kids and grandkids to want to stay here?
Indeed, and we go back to the challenge of managing growth. It's amazing that we take a look at subdivisions that were empty during the recession, and now they're booming. We take a look at the development, and again, you've traveled, you've run, you know the state, you're all over the state, but just particularly here in the Treasure Valley, what a transformation that we've had in the challenge of coordinating that growth, of making it smart growth.
I agree. I've been an advocate. Some of my developer friends haven't been too happy with me that when we put a lot of money into a road, we need to limit the access onto it, plan it ahead of time, put in frontage and backage roads so that those roads really do have the capacity. You know, I remember Eagle Road when it was a little 2-lane road, and then we put in that big 4-lane road, and everybody thought, well, that's going to be great forever. And then we let everybody build along it.
Right.
And then we had to put those if we would do those projects and control the access onto them, we could still have the growth and not take the most precious commodity away from our citizens, and that's their time being stuck in traffic.
You've been on the trail for quite some time. We're just talking about this campaign. Any experiences that you can share with us, anything that you may have learned? You know, we always hear when you go out and talk to the folks, you've learned anything that, look, I need all the help I can get. So any wisdom you'd like to impart would be great.
Well, whether it's public schools, whether it's higher education, whether it's economic development, Idaho's a very diverse state. What works in Wilder doesn't work in Rexburg.
Right.
And so you have to empower the local community and give them the tools they need to be successful because they know best. And just like the federal government doesn't know best what's for Idaho, the people in the Capitol building, when they're there and don't exactly know what's best for those small communities, so you have to continue to empower them to be successful. The thing that excites me the most is when I go to some small community, particularly a community that's been racked by the closure of a mill or a mine or a processing facility, when some hometown boy or girl comes up with a new idea and starts employing their neighbors that were dislocated by that. That just gives me more, and then they're involved in their community and participate in it. That's happening all over Idaho in big ways and small ways, and we just need to foster that as best we can.
Lieutenant Governor Brad Little, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kevin.
You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And quickly to Patricia that wants to talk a little bit about smartphone addiction. Good morning.
Hi. Yes, most definitely. Smartphones are not my favorite things, and I've experienced where the family, you're together with them, and it doesn't matter if it's a birthday party or whatever, everybody's got out their smartphones and whatever. In church on Christmas Eve, the pastor was explaining God has time to hear you, and he never looks at his watch. And I'm sitting next to my granddaughter, and I told her, and he never gets out his smartphone either. So anyway, that was funny. So anyway, they didn't really appreciate that, but I thought it was a great timing. Anyway, thank you. God bless you.
God bless you. We appreciate you, Patricia. Traffic and weather together. And Kevin Miller in the morning here. Don't forget Glenn Beck, Dave Ramsey, Sean Hannity, and the newest addition to the KIDO Talk Radio family, Lars Larson, giving his perspective from the Northwest about national views that impact our life. Of course, that's Lars Larson coming up today, right after Sean Hannity here at KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have your thoughts on, well, really, is this any way to run a government? Think about the continuing resolution. We're going to hear a lot about that, much more about Michael Wolf, and we'll start to delve into the state legislature as they kick off the session today. You heard from the lieutenant governor. We'll hear from Dr. Ahlquist tomorrow. as we roll along. I mean, here we go. We've got a lot going on. Nick Henderson, thank you very much. Lieutenant Governor Brad Little, thank you for joining us. And thank you. Good day. God bless. Ray, thanks. Keep the faith.